Welcome back to the Student Hub Live. This session is called How Do I Make Sure I Use High Quality Information? And the answer to that question is always base your assignments on your module material. But to discuss this in more detail, I'm joined by the library team. I have Ute and Judith with me today.
Hello.
Hello. Now, we've been talking a lot about the library all throughout today, as we normally do, and the various sessions that you run, and we've been filling students in on that. But today we're going to focus on some various frameworks and some other ways that students may not know that the library can support them in their studies. So we'd like to know whether you've visited the OU library online, yes or no, and would you be interested in attending online workshops, which they run, which are excellent. So, Ute, I wonder if we can first start by talking about why is it important to be critical about information, and perhaps you could explain what we mean by critical.
Yes, okay. It is very important both in academia and also in everyday life. So you are being asked actually to find information for your assignments all the time. And that information has to be really good quality information. And that's what we mean by being critical. You don't just select anything, particularly when it comes to websites, which haven't been necessarily quality checked by us. So you have to think of whether the information is relevant, high quality, and whether it will really answer your assignment question. So then you will hopefully get a much better mark, and it really is a better assignment. Also in everyday life, it's not just about assignments. We deal with information resources all the time, and being critical about information outside academia is also very important because, for example, health information. If we just read something somewhere on a website and they make certain claims, we might act on it and actually endanger our health because it's the wrong information. And also similarly, certain political statements or so, we might act on this and it has impact, wider impact on society. And we would probably not have acted like this had we known what the real information, the true information actually is, and had we been a bit more critical.
So you're talking about a number of different things here. One, you're talking about sources of information, like is it a good source? But the other thing you're talking about is even when you've got something in your Open University module material, which will be true, it's about whether that's appropriate information, whether it's good information. And you've got some frameworks here to sort of help filter through that, because sometimes it can be so tempting to write an assignment and think, oh, here's a big theory, I shall use all of that. But it's about being selective, isn't it?
Indeed, it is very much. So, you can if you want to, Jude. Brilliant. There's Jude, the poster girl. So this is what can actually help you about being critical with information. And this is the first framework I want to actually mention. And Jude will give an example later on how we can actually apply this to something. This is the WWW framework. And it stands for who, why, and when. So what you should actually ask yourself is, who has written, who has authored that information you're actually dealing with? So this is particularly pertinent and used for websites, but you can also use it for other resources. So if you want to think about who has authored a website, who has actually put it up, there's usually an About Us section. And that tells you more about a website. And sometimes there is a personal author as well on the website, and you can check their credentials. Have they done anything? Have they done some research in the field, for example? That's quite useful as well. So you actually know whether they are experts then. Then there is the why. The why is also quite important because if you are putting out information to inform and to educate, this is normally what you want, in particular if you want to actually write an assignment. And the information is usually then more objective. However, sometimes information has been put out to actually propose and propagate a certain agenda. And that might be a lot more biased, that kind of information. You know, you want to actually steer people into a certain direction, you want them to buy certain products, and maybe also believe in what you actually put out there and, you know, bring you on your side. So you can usually see that by the language that is being used. And when, particularly on websites, you normally have when was this information last updated. So you want to actually look at this because particularly if it's like health information, political information, if it hasn't been updated for like 1 or 2 years, it might not be very helpful, that kind of information to you. And you can actually see that and find that framework as well, which we have on our library pages. And that will be in our help and support section under finding resources for your assignment.
Brilliant. And it's also a link on the Student Hub Live website, so if you'd like to find those, HJ will put those in the chat as well. So you mentioned you were going to give us an example of how this could work then.
Yeah, so when you're thinking about the WHO, usually when you're thinking about an academic article, a quick Google of like the authors can normally turn up quite a few a LinkedIn profile or perhaps a staff list of like an academic institution to kind of find out a lot more information about them. And I did have, sorry, there's a bit Blue Peter section here. I did have this. So this is an example of an article that I found when I was doing some research last year. So sorry, it's not in exactly OU Harvard style, but there is a reason for it. So it's by Lucas McGeorge and Annette Kin, and it's got a very long, complicated scientific title. But within that article, they start talking about things like midi-chlorians and Yoda and the Force. And if you're a fan of a certain 1980s sci-fi film series, you'll start picking up that there is something going on. But if you start researching the names, which are actually a bit of a pun, don't know if anyone got that?
Yes.
Yeah. It brings up loads and loads of articles about how this is a fake article. It was written to be a fake article. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's got lots of quotes from Qui-Gon Jinn in it as well, so it's completely fake. But it is quite a good example where if you just Google the two names, Lucas McGeorge and Annette King, you immediately get bombarded with, this is a fake article, this is not something that you can trust. But it's the same with if you look for any articles by a proper, legitimate scientific article as well. And that's why Wikipedia isn't great, because you can't validate the WHO. Wikipedia can be edited by anyone, and you can't then look at, I think there was one that I found where the name was Darth Knight. Again, we were maybe doing something related to Star Wars research, possibly. But there was Darth Knight, and so you couldn't really tell who it was that had updated these articles, so you didn't know what their qualifications were, and that's why we don't recommend using Wikipedia as a source. And also then the why is why we can't rely on Wikipedia, because you don't know why these guys that edited Wikipedia did what they did.
And why they chose to write about mitochondria.
Exactly. So you can't really, you have absolutely no idea. And it was something like Ute said, you don't know why, because I think there's a couple of Wikipedia pages that are locked down for editing, because I think probably Donald Trump's page for some reason might be locked down because people have...
Everyone go Google that.
Possibly. Because you don't know, people edit it to discredit things, there's false information. I think, was it the Art Attack guy? Someone edited his Wikipedia page to say that he died about 5 years ago, but it was just a bit of a joke. But then obviously he got to hear about it and it's like, I'm not dead, what's going on?
Yeah.
So you don't know why people are editing this information. Are they trying to further an agenda or to discredit something? So you don't know why. And there's also, I think, as Ute mentioned, you don't know if you're going to be sold something, and also political agendas as well can be used there as well. You're thinking about the when, the third point on the framework. It's not just thinking about when, like April Fool's Day, which is a pretty obvious one, but it's also the age of what the information is in relation to what you're talking about now. So if they're using a 3-year-old article to promote a current political situation, it's probably not going to be relevant. And also, if you're thinking about technology, something that was written in 2005 probably wouldn't be relevant anymore because technology moves quite quickly. But in a subject area like English literature, something that was written in the mid-90s might still be relevant because it doesn't move that quickly. So the when is kind of subjective to your particular topic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And can I just point out, we're not going into this today, but there is also another framework which is a little bit more detailed, which is particularly useful for articles, peer-reviewed articles, longer articles, and that is the prompt framework. So you actually have like presentation, relevance, objectivity, method, provenance, and timeliness, and that makes it a little bit more detailed, and you can actually analyze it in more detail as well if you're actually using this for your journal articles rather than the websites.
So you've got the www and the prompt, and these are two frameworks students can find out about from the library page. There are also things that students might meet in their modules. So sometimes they might have an activity where they're asked to look at an article and apply these frameworks, and that can form part of the assessment. But equally, they are good because they can sort of allow you to break something down in a way of not just thinking, oh, is it good, is it bad? I don't know, because someone's written it and someone's published it, therefore it must be good. It's a sort of way, I guess, of trying to break it down, and that's what you mean, is it, by thinking critically about things?
Exactly. You have certain criteria, like quality criteria, and these are actually helping you to make up your mind whether, you know, being critical, whether something is really high quality information.
Okay, excellent. All right, now you were talking a little bit about Donald Trump and things, and that sort of brings me to the next thing about fake news, because one of the other things that people may not know the library do is you do upskill students on digital literacy.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, fake news very much fits into the whole thing, and in the last 2 or 3 years it has been very, very much in the media as well, particularly in the context of national and international elections and referenda. It's not a new thing, but it's been talked about a lot more recently. So really, what has happened as a result is that a lot of higher education institutions are putting more emphasis on training students how to actually analyze the quality of information, and really doing more training on this because they kind of see the importance of that criticality.
What do we mean then by this idea of fake news?
Fake
Who
news,
decides
yes.
what is fake?
Yeah, that is a good question.
It's a library.
I would love to say that was the case.
That would be lovely, wouldn't it? We just decide, yes.
Like misinformation comes into it
Yes,
as well.
it's pretty much misinformation, something which is, well, sometimes they're half-truths, sometimes it's something which has been completely misrepresented, made up, false information, factually false information, for example, which has been just put out there. There is often no verification of this particular kind of information, but it is there, and they're making a claim.
Levels of malice, I guess, is what you're saying.
There are
Is that
various,
sometimes it can be.
Yeah, and sometimes it's actually, there are instances when it's not intentional. Sometimes it's just kind of lazy journalism and people don't check up all their sources and don't quite put research into it. Yeah. But sometimes there is this, we have said it earlier, we want to actually propagate a particular agenda, and they want people to believe this is actually happening. And and that might just not be factual, really. They're not really telling us the true facts.
Yeah.
So, and that's what sometimes happens then.
Well, and it's why it's important to learn to write well in your own words, because sometimes just in conveying something with all, you know, honest intentions, you can end up conveying a completely different story just by missing out a few important pieces of information. Yeah. Okay, so Jude, then, fake news is a big sort of thing. I mean, we've seen lots of examples already, but I wonder if you can talk us through something more specific and why that matters in terms of students spotting it.
Yeah, I mean, I was also thinking about images is a big thing about fake news, because fake news is very impactful, it's very visual. You share, you know, to get something shared on Twitter or Facebook, you can use the images, and images and videos can be really easily faked, and they're quite hard to spot. Yeah. So because they can be photoshopped, but there are kind of online tools you can use to help you spot photoshopped pictures. There's something called photo forensics, which you upload the photo to, and it looks at all the pixels and spots where things have been changed. Oh, wow. And Google reverse image search is quite good as well, because it can tell you where an image has been taken from as well, because misrepresentation. The reason I'm talking about the images is that with fake news articles, they quite often use kind of fake images or images out of context. So I think there was a hurricane and people just used the wrong image because there was no kind of exciting images, obviously, from a hurricane.
And that made it look a lot worse.
And it made it look a lot worse. Or soldiers from a different war to kind of get a different message out. So and there was also something in the royal wedding. It was at Harry's wedding last year. There was an actor, Rick Hoffman, who was reported as being looking really bored because he was like this. Right. But actually, he said he was leaning away from someone with bad breath. So,
Yes.
So it's misrepresentation as well as using doctored images, as well as fake videos. Videos can be fake. So it's really important to try and find where these have all come from. And it's important to use these frameworks and think about it, because when you start moving outside of your module materials, you're going to come across things like this on the web. You're not just going to be sticking to materials that you'll find in the library. So the gold standard, highly trusted peer-reviewed journals. You won't just be sticking to that. You'll be looking at company reports. You'll be looking at newspaper articles, or just articles that you find on the web. So being aware that images can be faked as well as kind of the words, and then applying these frameworks will help you be able to judge and be critical about the sources that you do include in your assignments going forward.
Now that is all well and good, but I don't know one module where people have been asked to put images. Actually, I do know a few in psychology where people are asked to include images for things. But why does this matter to students? Why should they be mindful of pictures and things in an academic context?
I think it's because pictures, they create the impact, and they can kind of bias someone towards something as well. Because if you're sharing a picture of, I can't really think of an example off the top of my head, but if you're sharing a picture, it can colour the rest of the article as well. So, and it's also just to be mindful, if something looks a bit fake, then maybe you don't want to trust the rest of the article as well. So it's bearing that in mind. It's not the be all and end all, but it's something, another kind of arrow to have in your quiver, as it were.
Excellent. Okay. Now, you've spoken, Ute, about finding these on the website, but I wonder as well if you could mention just briefly some of the other things that the library does, because we were talking about some of the training sessions earlier, and we've asked people now whether or not they'd go to them, having met you. So we'll see what they have to say in just a second. But where can they find out more about the various services, including these?
Yeah, for example, the training sessions are actually available to everyone. One of our generic training sessions is exactly on this topic. And they can just find it on our training and events webpage. So they go to the library website, go to training and events, and then all the training sessions are listed. There is a short description as well. And then there is like finding the best quality information one as well. And there will be dates and times when they can actually join. And being part of a live session is actually quite nice, because they can ask us questions as well. They can, of course, listen to it and watch it and catch up if they don't have time, and they still learn something, but it is nice if they can to attend live and ask us questions.
And to talk to other students as well. Let's see how many people at home said they'd like to come. Okay, 83% have said yes. 8% said perhaps, and only 8% have said no.
That's good to know.
Okay.
So there you are, those will be full. And they're very frequently run as well, which is great.
They are very frequently run. We usually have, every month some of them are being run, and we kind of go through the different generic sessions, and there should be one every month on this topic as well.
And I hear your referencing ones are very good as well.
It's very popular.
Very popular topic for, yes, okay.
Definitely, yes. There is also, by the way, apart from what we've also already mentioned, there is a section which is called, or a collection of activities which is called Being Digital.
Yes.
So if people are fairly new and they want to have some quick exercises and activities on this topic, they can always go to Being Digital. It's under services for you, and then services for students, also on the library website, and they can just familiarize themselves a little bit more with evaluating information and the frameworks we've already mentioned, that it's on the help and support page.
Oh, well, Judith and Ute, thank you so much for coming along. That's been a really interesting session, and I've learnt something new as well. So that's always good, and it's great to show students the sorts of things that the library can deliver, in addition to all of the, support on things like referencing and finding information and literature reviewing. This is a really important skill, as you say, not just for your studies, but for everyday life as well.
Don't forget, if you have any questions, if you found a resource and you're not quite sure, just call, web chat, email. Library help desk is there 24/7 for you. So.
No, they really are 24/7, because you've got a deal, haven't you, with some librarians in the
Could be chatting
States.
to someone in California.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's always good. Excellent, excellent. Well, lovely. Thank you so much for coming along. My pleasure. It always is. We're going to show you a student story now, and we're going to learn about Paul and his study journey, and then we're going to come back and find out about another excellent source of support for you in your studies, the Careers and Employability Service. So I'll see you in a couple of minutes after this short video.